So we'll start off with pop-ups, the revolution, then we'll move on to location, then letting requirements, fit out, rates and tax, repair and planning. At the end of the webinar, I'll deal with any questions you might have, so please type any questions in the questions drop down on the dashboard, which is shown on this slide for you. So the pop-up revolution has been with us for some time now. It was not long before the need for landlords to fill their less popular retail space and new operators wanting more flexible letting arrangements led to a wave of these new age occupiers. The expansion has been vast. Over a 2-year period, from the summer of 2015 to the summer of 2017, it is expected that 3.4 million pop-up shops will have launched in the UK alone. In a recent poll of entrepreneurs planning to start a business, almost 30% said they intend to do so by launching a pop-up store to test out the market and hone their product offering. Whether it be a food truck operator opening their first restaurant or an innovative fashion designer looking to sell their wares, most pop-up tenants will initially have a few basic requirements. Location in or near to a prime retail area. As with any retailer, footfall is crucial, but this is especially relevant to a new operator who may not have built up their customer base yet. As well as the more traditional bricks and mortar locations, public spaces and stations are also obvious targets to maximise footfall. A good example of this is Old Street Underground Station in London, who frequently host pop-up shops. However, pop-up tenants are also embracing the more unusual and quirky spaces and will also heavily promote themselves through social media and the aim of their pop-up becoming a go-to destination. Short-term let. Because they are usually new to the market or first-time occupiers, a short tenancy is usually preferred. This means less financial commitment and more flexibility to see how the business develops. This is not always attractive to a landlord, but it can bring a rejuvenating buzz to poorly rented areas and can also have the added advantage of drawing in other potential tenants and so on. Also, if successful, it's likely the business will be happy to take a longer lease once the short-term arrangement expires. Meat Liquor, just north of Oxford Street in London, is a good example of this. The business took a short-term tenancy of some very low-grade space under a multi-storey car park to house their first burger restaurant, having initially started out as a popular food truck. Due to their success, the landlord was happy to give them a longer-term lease, and they've become a destination in their own right. Meat Liquor now have a number of locations all over the UK, and as a business are worth in excess of £20 million. Fit out. Again, the pop-up tenant is likely to want to spend as little as possible on their fit out, and so often will be looking for existing equipment and features that it can utilise whilst also adding character to their unit. The occupier will also need to consider the following. Business rates. A landlord will be keen to fill the vacant unit, not just to receive some income, but also to pass on the business rates liability to the tenant. However, due to the short-term nature of the letting, the pop-up tenant may wish to avoid this extra cost and prefer agreeing an all-inclusive rent. VAT. It's likely that the landlord will be registered for VAT and be charging this on top of the rent, and so unless the pop-up tenant agrees an all-inclusive rent, then they will also need to consider whether they should register for VAT to enable them to recover the VAT they spend. Security of tenure. If their venture is successful, it is possible that the pop-up tenant might like the certainty of a new lease at the end of their short let. It is, however, doubtful that a landlord would want to lose its flexibility to let to other potential tenants when the tenancy expires. As such, the landlord is likely to insist that the short let is excluded from the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954, meaning that the tenant would not have an automatic right to renew their term when it expires. The pop-up operator would therefore need to negotiate new terms at the point that their initial tenancy comes to an end. Dilapidations and repairing obligations. As touched on earlier, the pop-up tenant wants quirky features and a cheap fit-out. They will not want to be responsible for putting the property into any better state of repair than they take it in. Tenants would be well advised to agree a photographic schedule of condition when they take the lease to ensure no potentially onerous rectification requirements are imposed at the end of their short term. This way, the tenant can insist that they are not required to keep the property in any better state of repair than when they took it over. Change of use and planning. A key consideration will be the use the tenant intends to put the property to and the extent of any fit-out works. If the existing use needs changing, the building is listed, or works are potentially substantial, then it is probable that planning consent will be required. The very nature of a pop-up does not fit well with the potential delay and lack of fluidity this may lead to, but if required, such permissions will be a prerequisite to the proper operation of the pop-up. Premises licenses. If the pop-up is a restaurant or other establishment selling alcohol, then it will need to have a premises license in place before it does so. So, in conclusion, the short-term lettings market has moved a long way from Christmas shops for a 1-month period in December. Landlords are now open to the idea of the value of a pop-up unit can add to the feel and marketability of these schemes. Add to this the entrepreneurial spirit and desire of new operators to take on these units, and it seems the pop-up market is here to stay. So, let's see if we've had any questions. Okay, so Mark has asked, what would usually happen if I wanted to stay in a pop-up shop for longer? Well, provided the landlord is happy for you to stay on, it's likely that they would get you to sign up to another short-term license or a lease before your current one expires. That's the usual position on this one. Okay, Julie wants to know the best way for her to find a suitable pop-up. Now, as you might expect, most property agents can help on this one, but there's now some speciality ones that focus on short-term occupations that you may have heard of, such as Appear Here. If you need any introductions to any relevant property individuals who might be able to help, then please do drop me an email and I can put you in touch with these people. Okay, that seems to be all for now on the questions, but here is my email address should anyone wish to get in touch with me after the webinar, or you'll see there's our Twitter real estate account, so please do follow us and we'll be sure to follow you back. And that is all. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.